And they were like, that's not what it means. That's not what they're saying. It was the end of an era, a cycle, you know? So, I was never like buying all kinds of waters and, you know what I mean? Like when people are panicking and all that, because my mom was like, that's not what they're saying. That's not what this whole thing about, you know?
Now, Dr. Toombs, back to you. Where were you born? Were you born in Mexico? Were you born in California?
I was born in Los Angeles, in East LA, at the Mission Hospital.
What part of Los Angeles did you grow up in?
Well, early I lived in Pico Union area, and then I moved out from there when I was like about 11 to South Los Angeles, the Huntington Park area, and I was pretty much, always traveling. I had a lot of friends from all over, the country and all over the world, so I was always traveling. I never just stayed in one place.
Are you the youngest, oldest, middle child?
I'm the middle child.
Can you describe what your parents were like growing up? Were they strict? Were they...
Oh yeah, my dad was pretty strict, but he was gone, He took off when I was young, and it left me to, help out my mom and just, become the man real quick, early.
It said that growing up, you would actually go to church and to the market and back home with your mom. Is that correct? Can you tell us about those early years in your life?
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I even saw graffiti. Like, I never had, like, graffiti magazines, and, there was no internet back then. So when I would go as a kid to the store with my mom, I would see this guy up, and he wasn't even a graffiti writer, he was a gang member. I would see him up, and then I would go to church with her, and then I would see him up across the street, and then everywhere I go, I would see him up, and it just kind of popped into my head. I was like, yo, that's cool. So basically, graffiti is about putting your name everywhere. And I always thought that was pretty cool, you know what I mean?
It sounds like before hip-hop style of graffiti, you noticed gang style of graffiti. Can you describe to us the differences between the two, and why did the gang style of graffiti catch your eye?
Well, where I grew up, it was just more gang graffiti than hip-hop style, New York style graffiti. And it was just abundantly everywhere, But I knew the difference, and the difference is, pretty much territorial, your barrio where you grew up at your hood, and when you mark the walls, you're pretty much letting everybody know, this is their hood, and, beware. And then graffiti is more about getting up. It's about your name and just bombing, being all city,
As you're seeing graffiti at this young age, what are you up to before graffiti? Are you into skateboards? Are you into video games? What is a young Dr. Toombs doing before graffiti?
Comic books, and, there was a mixture of pop locking and breaking at that time when I was young. Breaking was a lot, everywhere. So, I got introduced to, music from Curtis Blow, Run DMC, stuff like that. Break beats, a lot of break beats.
Right. Growing up, you were really big into hip-hop. Can you tell us, where did that influence in hip-hop come from? How do you discover hip-hop? Who introduces you to it? Do you recall?
I remember walking down the street on Pacific, and they used to sell tapes right on the street, right on Florence and Pacific. They used to sell these tapes, like the street vendors, but the ones on the street. And I seen a tape that had like these bunny rabbits, like kind of posing like b-boy stands, and I thought it was really cool, So it just said Tommy Boy Records on it, And so I said, you know what? Let me get that. It was like $5, I think, at that time. So I still stole it though. I fucking stole the tape because they were fucking busy selling shit. So I stole the tape, I took it home, I put it on, and I was like, wow, this is it.
Do you remember whose tape that was? Who was on that?
It was a mixtape. I think it was, I know it was Run DMC was on it, and I know there was some Slick Rick. There was a couple of different artists from the 80s,
Growing up, did you show any artistic talent early on? Were you getting in trouble for writing before you knew about graffiti?
No, before I knew about graffiti, I was just like into comic books, I would have X-Men comic books, I would have like Robotech, I would have a lot of different comic books, and I would pretty much just kind of trace the characters and draw. I was always into like doodling really and just drawing.
When you first see that gangster graffiti on the streets, what are your thoughts about it? Do you ask your parents why are they writing on the wall? What sense do you get from what's happening on the streets?
No, I would have never asked my parents why people ran the wall because they would just turn around and slap me or throw a chancla at me. It was more like I noticed it, and then I read it, and then I seen it again, and then I seen it again, and it just clicked in my head. I was like, that's cool as shit.
How old are you at this time? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember, man. I don't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. I'm not gonna remember how old I was. I would say, this is like 1987. So, do the math.
There's a well-known story about you in the bathroom putting alcohol in your Prismacolors when your dad walks in. Can you please talk about that story? Because was that during your early stages in graffiti?
It was right before graffiti. I would copy the art that's on the comic books. And, Prismacolor, they were expensive back then. I grew up in the hood. I was poor, And so I wasn't going to ask my dad for money for markers because he would be like, nah, this is like, why am I going to give you my hard-earned money for that? So I learned, and also too, when you draw back then, if you add alcohol to those markers, you could do the blending technique, right? So I had like a piece book, and I was doing kind of like letters on that, and really characters, stuff like that. So I was going to ask him for money, so I was putting alcohol in it. He thought I was sniffing the stuff, and he fucked me up. Like, I remember that was like a real, he really thought I was doing drugs.
How does he catch you? Where are you?
Well, I'm just in the bathroom in the hallway, and he walks in there and he sees me doing that, and he thought I was, sniffing it or something.
What does he tell you?
He just starts fucking me up. He didn't tell me shit. That's what he thought I was doing, and he was gonna fuck me up.
Do you try to talk to him and tell him what's going on?
No, I just took the ass whooping, That's how it was back then. Like, kids didn't have no rights. They didn't ask you, like, oh, what do you want to do today? You didn't give you an iPad. They just like, you get fucked up. I mean, especially if you have a drunk dad coming at home. He just fuck you up just to fuck you up, you know what I mean?